20 miles west of the Outer Hebrides sits Elan Moor, a jagged piece of rock rising out of the North Atlantic. It is an incredibly hostile environment, fully exposed to the harshest maritime weather on the planet. To guide ships through these treacherous waters, a state-of-the-art lighthouse was constructed on the island. Operating it required a strict 14-day rotation system, ensuring a continuous human presence to keep the mechanical lens turning and the fire burning. The Northern Lighthouse Board entrusted this machinery to 3 men, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. Between them, they held decades of maritime experience and had built reputations for stoic, unwavering discipline. These were not men prone to amateur mistakes. Survival relied entirely on strict, unbreakable routines. Every maintenance chore and log entry was highly scheduled, because in this kind of isolation, a single misstep is fatal. On December 26, 1900, the relief ship Hesperus arrived at the island. No flag flew from the pole, the provision boxes from 2 weeks prior sat untouched, and no men waited on the dock to greet them. Relief keeper Joseph Moore climbed the steep stairs to the compound and entered the lighthouse. It was entirely silent. He found a stopped clock on the wall, a single overturned chair, and a meal sitting half-eaten on the table. Hanging on their pegs, right inside the entrance, were the men's heavy, waterproof oilskin coats. A Scottish winter on the Atlantic Ocean is physically punishing. A veteran keeper stepping outside into a December squall without their protective gear violates the most basic law of maritime survival. The physical evidence presented an impossible vacuum. 3 hardened men seemingly walked away from a half-eaten meal, abandoned their protective coats, and vanished into thin air, leaving a perfectly undisturbed domestic space behind them. While the cold ashes and hanging coats pointed toward a sudden, quiet disappearance, the official station logbook told a different story. On December 12th, they document a severe gale and a passing ship in distress. By the 13th, veteran Donald MacArthur was weeping. The final entry, December 14th, reads, "Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all." After that, the page is blank. The written record describes a crew experiencing a psychological breakdown caused by a violent natural disaster. This contradicts the locked doors and untouched winter gear found in the physical room downstairs. The paradox deepens when we compare these journal entries to empirical weather data collected in the Outer Hebrides that exact same week. This animated graph displays the historical barometric pressure recorded by nearby shore stations and passing ships between December 12th and 14th. The line remains stable. The pressure was flat, the seas were calm, and the skies were clear. While surrounding ships verified calm conditions, the men isolated inside the lighthouse tower were convinced they were enduring crushing forces and gale winds. The keepers were trapped in an impossibility. They endured a harrowing, psychologically devastating storm that simply did not exist in verifiable physical reality. The Northern Lighthouse Board sent an investigator, who ultimately filed an official conclusion. A massive, unexpected rogue wave must have suddenly swept all 3 men off the cliff edge at once. But physical facts dismantle that theory. A rogue wave cannot explain how the heavy entry doors were locked from the inside. It doesn't explain the coats left on the pegs, and it doesn't account for the days of terrifying logbook entries leading up to the silence. Modern researchers have proposed the infrasound theory. This suggests that specific rock formations on the island trapped low-frequency ocean vibrations, exposing the men to acoustic waves that can induce nausea, panic, and auditory hallucinations. In the Flannan Isle's case, every attempt to apply logic hits a wall of contradictory evidence. Each physical clue seems to belong to a different version of events. In 1971, the Elan Moor Lighthouse was automated. The fragile human element was permanently removed from the rock. Today, the machinery operates alone. The relentless turning of the light performs its duty, indifferent to the men it swallowed over a century ago. We build structures to bring order and light to the dark corners of the world, but sometimes those efforts are quietly erased by forces we cannot comprehend, leaving behind a silence that will never be broken.